Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel and welcome to the second part of the good and the bad review series for the Dynasty Warriors games that I'm doing. We're doing the main series first and then we'll probably jump into the spin-offs right after, at least the ones that I've played so far, and we are currently on Dynasty Warriors 3. Now this is a tough one I had to review because of the game that I started with, so I tried my best to not be biased and look at every single good and bad thing about this game, and hopefully I captured every single piece of that. If I did miss anything, you guys would let me know down below, but appreciate you guys all joining me for this today. Hope you guys are having a good day. And with that being said, go ahead and jump into the good parts of Dynasty Warriors 3. Now starting off, just like we did with the last review, the first good thing about Dynasty Warriors 3, and most of the games I think do a very good job with it, is the intro or the opening scene for Dynasty Warriors 3 is absolutely electrifying. One of the best openings in my opinion from the Dynasty Warriors series. Theme song that goes with it, the characters clashing, you get the lightning coming down for all these little character moments for newer characters have been added, and it's just a perfect encapsulation of what Dynasty Warriors 3 is, and the intro is going to be a constant theme in most of these reviews. Moving over to the opening edit, at least for the older games, you're going to see this one here as well. The music for it, the different intricate fight scenes, the different movements, how they incorporate different characters, and how you can sit there and edit it and play with it. I'm sure lots of us did that because I did it when I was younger as well. And then piggybacking off of that one, since I've already talked about it in the first two, we have the music. Some of the best music from this series is in Dynasty Warriors 3. It was so good, in fact, that some of the music was actually remixed in Dynasty Warriors 8. Now, jumping into the changes, how Dynasty Warriors 3 improved on Dynasty Warriors 2, starting off with introducing a couple of new modes. So like in Dynasty Warriors 2, we only had Muso and Free mode. In Dynasty Warriors 3, we get the base ones with Muso and Free, and then we get the two added ones of Versus and Challenge mode. Definitely a good addition just to have the players do something a little bit different. Are they worth like replaying over and over again? I wouldn't say so. I think maybe one or two times and you kind of get the gist of it. If you want to just grind it out and try to get the best score possible, that's always fun to do. Time attack, and I think you had the endurance one where you defeat as many people as you can without dying. So those are always fun little challenges. And then versus mode, where you go against, a friend who is that right there with you, gets a little split screen, and you guys go head to head. But the versus mode was always really cool because you always had the moment to, pick the character you like, you had your friend pick the character they liked, you duked it out, shook hands after, and maybe run it a couple more times. Then moving right into that, just since I've already talked about it, another good thing about Dynasty Warriors 3 is the introduction of the split screen co-op. So I don't personally have a lot of stories myself in terms of co-op and split screen, but for the most part, there's a lot of solo playthroughs for me when I was younger. When someone did hop on, playing with them and, strategizing or fighting with them, doing the double Muso, all that stuff, which was always really fun to do. But regardless, it was really cool to see that added into the game. Moving on to another cool addition into the game, we have the database for the game. So not only can you see the weapons and the items that you've unlocked and all that, but you also have the information for each character, NPC and playable alike. You can learn more about the characters, and it was just cool to see a little encyclopedia for people who were interested to learn about perhaps some of their more favorite characters in the game. And the next good thing I want to talk about is after you completed somebody's Muso mode, you got a really cool outro for the game. Funny animation with the iconic music, at least to me. They're always dancing or having a good time, and anytime I play through it, I always see something new with this outro, so it's always refreshing to see new things with that. And then a small little cool thing about the outro is that they always flash the pictures of the characters who died during that character's Muso mode, which is always, it's just a little quality of life thing, which I really enjoyed. Diving into the modes themselves, or at least into Muso mode, every character, I would say pretty much every character has a different Muso mode. Yes, you play the same stages with multiple characters, but the order of which you play it or certain stages that you play is unique to each character, which I kind of enjoyed. It gives it kind of a semi-individualized experience for each character. You're not playing the same stages over and over again depending on the force you're in. So if you're in the Way Kingdom playing 3 different characters, you're going to have 3 semi-different Muso modes than having the same stages over and over and over again, which I always appreciated. And piggybacking right off of that, we have the addition of new characters into Dynasty Warriors 3. Definitely a good thing. A lot of beloved characters that we love today got their starts here in Dynasty Warriors 3. The older characters from Dynasty Warriors 2 are starting to look a little bit more refined, a little bit more fresh. And I think the characters in Dynasty Warriors 3 really got an upgrade in terms of the way they look, and the additions were absolutely beautiful. Then jumping into another really cool addition in Dynasty Warriors 3, you had the addition, I mean you had it in Dynasty Warriors 2, but the bodyguard system in Dynasty Warriors 3 was heavily improved on. You can choose the weapons that they use, you can choose how many you bring with you, upgrade a certain level, they change the look and the way they, behave. Bodyguard system's always cool. Plus it's just refreshing and kind of fun to have. Like if you're going deeper into territory and leaving your allies behind, you have a group of decent bodyguards who you kind of bond with a little bit as you go through the Muso mode or the stage with that specific character. At least I do. So I really enjoyed the bodyguard upgrades for Dynasty Warriors 3. Then talking about a next huge, great upgrade from Dynasty Warriors 2 to 3, we've got the addition of voice acting. So just adding the immersiveness into the battlefield with the voice acting was an absolute beautiful move by Koei Tecmo to go from barely any voice acting to tons of immersive voice acting in Dynasty Warriors 3. They got it in their intros. While you're on the battlefield, your cutscenes are looking good. Everything in between, creating iconic, funny moments that Dynasty Warriors 3 fans still laugh at today. The voice acting did a great job. Just adding a lot of immersiveness into the game and really making the game feel more alive than the way it was in Dynasty Warriors 2. Next up, hopping back into the Muso modes. The Muso mode itself having a scalable difficulty is a huge plus in my opinion. Dynasty Warriors 3 is a tough game, but it's not that tough. At least to me. Maybe because my save file is so old and some of my characters are so souped up that maybe I'm a little jaded. So if I play through a fresh one, maybe I really feel how difficult it is. Of course, if I put it on the hardest level and everything like that. But I'm playing through normal for, this video or just to get a feel of the old game again. And I'm not really struggling in the beginning, but towards the end, I'm putting a little bit more sweat onto it. Especially towards, again, those later levels. Tongate and up is pretty much, you're going to have to try a little harder because if you don't, you will get swept up. But I like that it's a scalable difficulty. The Yellow Turban Rebellion is not ridiculously difficult as it shouldn't be. It's your warm up into the game. It should be at a decent level. And then as you get to Wuzhong and Hefei Castle and Yiling, that's when it really starts getting difficult, especially some of the characters that are there and all of that. So I really appreciate that there was a scalable difficulty in Dynasty Warriors 3 versus just having a stagnant difficulty throughout the entire time. Next good thing about Dynasty Warriors 3 is the iconic maps that were in Dynasty Warriors 3. I think they did a great job with the maps. A lot of iconic ones in my opinion, just because I play the game so much. I know all of them pretty much by heart, where everything goes, where everything is. And I think they created a really immersive battlefield with the way the maps look and feel and everything that was implemented in terms of making the battleground as realistic as possible, at least for the time. Then moving on to the next one, we have cutscenes. Cutscenes were so good in Dynasty Warriors 3. Were they the best storytelling mechanics? No, some of them we'll talk about a little later. But in terms of adding that kind of, for lack of better terms, immersiveness and the preemptive rush you would get, like, oh, okay, cool, we're about to go to war, or okay, cool, we got some moments for characters that perhaps didn't get a lot of time to shine, or maybe weren't really noticeable, maybe because of their moveset or whatever it may be. But it was just cool to see the cutscenes really come to life, and the way they looked and how everybody moved and stuff was really nice. So cutscenes I think were really good in Dynasty Warriors 3. Next up, a huge upgrade from the last game. We already talked about it during the database section, but the weapon progression in this game is absolutely amazing. No longer does the characters have generic looking weapons, not in the end because you all start out with the generic ones, but they all grow into these unique looking weapons that each character has an identity with, and it's absolutely amazing. A lot of characters have swords, but all their swords in the game look different. The handles look a little different, maybe the tips of the sword, the way it's curved, or whatever it may be. I really like that there was so much identity and so much individualism for the characters in Dynasty Warriors 3 with the weapon progression. Next up, similar to weapons, the addition of items was absolutely a good thing as well. You get some stat boosts for characters that starting out at 0, that help you out in the early stages, and then you have things that can help you last a little longer or get you out of a bind if you're in one, or get a saddle so you can actually roam around the map without having to walk everywhere, which is always great. But the addition of items is definitely a huge good thing. Now moving into gameplay, I might bounce out for a couple other things depending on if I miss something. I'm just going off the notes I made here. But going into gameplay, similar to Dynasty Warriors 2, I think the impactfulness of the gameplay is really, really good. The hits are really well done. The animation, like the little punch effects that Dynasty Warriors 3 exhibits, has always been one of my favorites. I love the sound it makes. I love the visual effect it has. Definitely a lot of good stuff there. Jumping right into the next one because it kind of plays off it. I want to talk about it. The game also feels a whole lot smoother in this game. Turning and blocking, you know, you quickly changing the camera real quick. The game is smooth and flowing through so much better than it was in Dynasty Warriors 2. Not as clunky, or, you know, there was moments in Dynasty Warriors I felt kind of stuck. But in Dynasty Warriors 3, I think the fluidity of the character is really well done. Here's at number 18. Definitely a small little quality of life thing, but I wanted to mention it. When your character is stronger than the peons or even the officers that you're going against, you genuinely feel it. So if they're blocking and you're hitting them and your character is much stronger, the guard will actually break through without having to use a charge attack. Or even if you use a charge attack and they kind of stumble back a little bit and lose their guard, that's always a really good feeling. I enjoyed it. It was cool to have kind of the abilities that the AI had. Again, if you're too strong, some of the peons that hit you, they didn't make you flint. And I just like that little quality of life that they added in. Then piggybacking off of that one, just as another small little one, I really like the amount of drops that the game has, not just for health, the affinity items as well, the axes, the defense boost, the speed, whatever it may be. I love that there was a variety of different drops that help you mid-fight that only, to me, enhance the gameplay and the experience. Then coming on to the next point, I'm so glad they nerfed the ability. They didn't get rid of it, but they nerfed it, is that enemies heal much less than they did in Dynasty Warriors 2, and they kind of have to, quote-unquote, earn their heal versus just being given it. They have to do a small little charge in order to re-heal instead of just being able to get up and heal instantaneously. It was always frustrating, but they usually do it after they hit you down, so if you are quick enough, you can stop them from doing it, which added a little bit more of a challenge, and at least for me, prompts me to get up as fast as possible so I can hit them to make sure they don't heal. Next up, same point that I had from Dynasty Warriors 2 is going to jump into this one as well. Morale still matters in Dynasty Warriors 3, and I think it affects the game a little bit more than it does in Dynasty Warriors 2. In Dynasty Warriors 2, it felt like when I was affecting the morale or the bar was going up, it still didn't matter as much, as my allies still would struggle, and I would still have to go help them. It would make them last a little longer, but they would never come out victorious. In Dynasty Warriors 3, it's really cool to see the rewarding factor of if I'm on the other side of the map, because Dynasty Warriors 3, the maps are much bigger than Dynasty Warriors 2, and if I'm on one side of the map clearing enemies, raising the morale of everyone around us, the commander's morale goes up, which in turn affects the people on the other side of the map. Then they can start killing perhaps the remaining peons in that area, or the sub-generals, or even the officer in that area themselves. Again, staying on the similarities to Dynasty Warriors 2, the peon significance in Dynasty Warriors 3 is still very, very good. And each character or each peon in Dynasty Warriors 3 had their own unique moveset. I'm pretty sure they shared the movesets with some of the other NPC generals or some of the actual playable officers themselves, besides like the Musos and everything. But it's cool to see that the peon significance extends to their Muso attacks, the way they move, and it was really cool to see that they still have that in this game. Next few are going to be very tiny, but you know, I want to cover everything. So the first one is while you're blocking, you have the ability to push the enemy back if you press square at the right time, giving you a chance to breathe and of course counter and all that. In this game, they brought in the Muso invincibilities. So unlike in Dynasty Warriors 2, when you do your Muso, you can get interrupted, but from this game and forward, they introduced the Muso invincibility, which allows you to stay in an invulnerable state while performing your Muso. And then finally, the last one, kind of piggybacking off the fluidity and the smoothness that I mentioned earlier, the Somersault addition in Dynasty Warriors 3, which I was missing in Dynasty Warriors 2, helps a ton to the fluidity of the game. Very glad they added that into the game. Then moving into another one, kind of small again, but you know, that's what we're here for. The gate captain significance in the game, I enjoy it. I like that there is a strategic element in order to go about the mission. People aren't just spawning out of nowhere. There's these gates that the reinforcements are kind of coming out of, and if you don't take down the gate captains, you'll be fighting for quite some time. But if you go nip it in the butt, you cut off the resources, you cut off the reinforcement point, and it allows you to carve through the enemy forces in kind of a strategic way. Alright, and the last thing I want to talk about, or at least the last thing that I can think of in terms of my notes and what I have here, is the rewards and replayability for Dynasty Warriors 3. There is a lot of value in replaying Dynasty Warriors 3. Not just in terms of having fun and the experience, but you can get your characters leveled up, and not just that, but you get better weapons. You can obviously go for the fourth weapons, which I honestly forgot to mention, so I'm just gonna pop it in right here. But the Easter egg weapon hunts for the fourth weapons for Dynasty Warriors 3 was awesome. Now, fortunately for all of us, that are watching this have the ability to look up how to get them, but it still provides a challenging experience that is rewarding in the end. And that's what I enjoy about Dynasty Warriors 3. I think it has a lot of good components. It was a huge upgrade from Dynasty Warriors 2, and no matter who you play as, there is tons of value for replaying characters within the same faction or even the same characters themselves. Now, moving into the bad for Dynasty Warriors 3. Alright, so again, first game I started with, I really try to analyze as much as I can, but honestly, the bad list is about half as big as the good list. If I miss anything, please let me know down below. Let's go ahead and talk about it. First thing we're going to talk about, going back into voice acting, is the misleading pronunciation on the dub side. So obviously the dubbed version, the dubbed voice acting for Dynasty Warriors has been all over the place, and we'll revisit it pretty much every time we go into the next title. But Dynasty Warriors 3 was the start of it. Most of the pronunciations I'm pretty sure is wrong. I am Zhao Yun! Even some of the characters' names weren't properly put together, so that misled a lot of Westerners or English-speaking players to think characters were certain names because that's how they were presented to us in the games. Staying on the topic of dubbing, for Dynasty Warriors 3 specifically, there was, again, a lot of iconic, great moments, but there was also a lot of moments still funny because it just didn't make any sense. Like, one of the cutscenes I think in particular is when Zenji and Sun Shangjiang, and Zenji shoots a bow or an arrow at her feet, and her response to that is, "You did it."
Huh. Sorry. You did it!
Which doesn't make any sense. Hilarious, because it's like, what? That's like, okay, it's like a 7-year-old responding. But as iconic as the voice acting was, there was some weird moments that didn't really make a lot of sense. But, it's the primitive version of Dynasty Warriors. It's the very first time they had voice acting, so it was, I don't know, it was very interesting. The next bad thing on the list for Dynasty Warriors 3, at least in this version, alright, Extreme Legends I'm going to do a separate video for, is that none of the other characters had a story mode. You can't play Lubu or Zhurong or any of the other characters in a Muso mode and see how their story went until Extreme Legends came out. And then following up is that the game is very unforgiving, and that just adds a challenge to the game. It's not necessarily the worst thing in the world, but I want to put it on the list because you make a small mistake and the game, especially on the hard levels, will make you pay for it. Crossbows, missing jumping on your horse, jumping into one of the platforms and then jumping down and getting smacked down and pelted. The game is unforgiving when it comes to that, and they are relentless. When they have an opportunity to attack you, they will absolutely attack you. Next bad point for Dynasty Warriors 3 is some of the maps may be a little confusing, and I'm only going to say because if you're a newer player, like for example the Yellow Turban Rebellion, and you don't know the map at all, like you don't even know it, it's very hard to navigate, at least the center part. And if you're playing on the harder levels or even normal, and maybe it's a fresh, clean playthrough, the chances of Zhang Jiao actually killing He Jin is actually quite high, because when you're trying to find him or getting to his spot where the main camp, where he's at, it's actually kind of hard to get there, because you don't know where the openings are. It's all closed off to a specific direction. I think there's only one way to get into his main base, but maps like the Yellow Turban Rebellion, where you couldn't really see where the openings were, could lead you to potentially losing the game because you couldn't reach your commander in time. The next one, very small quality of life thing. It's not that big of a deal, but it's not in the game, so I had to find something. This point is that there's no icon for where your horse is at. So if you start with the red hair saddle, which takes up one of your item slots, and let's say you just travel too far away, you have to remember where you put or where you got off the red hair, because if you don't, then you're out of your red hair saddle and you just kind of wasted your item slot. So very small thing, but it just kind of sucked. Then moving to the next point, same thing with Dynasty Warriors 2. The directional attacks in Dynasty Warriors 3 is still a problem. You get stuck in kind of one direction for a little bit, and then kind of piggybacking off of that as well, the auto aim for Dynasty Warriors 3 is a little weird sometimes, like especially when you're doing a character C4 or C5, the one where they knock them up and your character goes, jumps up to do a knockdown. If you knock out multiple people, like let's say you're targeting a general, if you knock out multiple people, sometimes your character will turn around and hit one of the peons instead of the general, right? Which leaves you vulnerable because they'll somersault out, you'll be coming back down to the ground, and they'll be right in position to just absolutely mop you up, which plays right onto the game being unforgiving. So, and then the next point, I think it's only applicable to the PS2 version, at least from what I've heard. PlayStation 2 Dynasty Warriors 3 has quite a bit of slowdowns on some of the maps, especially the bigger ones, or if you're in a large area. Chibi is usually where I noticed it because of the fire that's in the background, the different colors and all that, so usually weren't very fun to deal with because sometimes it was disorienting and again puts you in a spot where the game becomes unforgivable. And then coming up next to number 9, the peons in the game kind of, I know I talked about them being significant, but they're also a little, at least the lower versions like the privates and maybe some of the sergeants aren't very significant. The privates for sure, because they don't really pose much of a threat at all. It's not the fact that they don't do damage or they don't make you flinch when they like swing their weapons. It's that privates are more likely to just like stand there and look at you. They kind of do that little like circle movement around you, so their aggression kind of drops down a little bit. Same thing with your allied general. They have their aggressive moments, but they don't seem to be at, like the bodyguards that you have with you, when they're fully upgraded, seem to be more aggressive than the generals who are with you. I'm not saying that they aren't aggressive, because they are, but they'll have their moments where they kind of just sit there and they won't really do much. And then finally, the last point is, I mean, I couldn't think of anything else. I looked for things. I sat here for a while and I was like, what else sucks? You know, does the menu does not look good or anything. I mean, there's nothing really to complain about. But the last thing I'm going to talk about on the bad side of Dynasty Warriors 3, piggybacks off of the game being unforgiving, is that crossbows, the archers in this game are absolutely deadly. I'm pretty sure it's among the worst in Dynasty Warriors 3. Certain maps, man, Yiling, Wuzhong, Hefei, I mean, the harder maps, they make you absolutely pay. They're usually in like clutters. Like one group is like 5. It's like you get the first crossbowman and then his unit, but the ones in the watchtowers, those are always really annoying to deal with. The clutters of them, there's like 3 or 4 different groups. Hefei was annoying for that. Right up where South P's at, there were so many of them. There was so many of them. Made the game challenging for sure, but sometimes it was like unwinnable. There was like unwinnable situations with those archers sometimes. But yeah, I think that's all I have for the video here, guys. That's the good and the bad for Dynasty Warriors 3 in my opinion. I don't have anything else for the game in particular. Let me know if I missed something. I spent a few days on this playing through a couple different stories, and for me, Dynasty Warriors 3 is still one of the most enjoyable Dynasty Warriors. I don't find it to be extremely difficult. I have a lot of fun with the game. Yeah, I really enjoyed the game. It's among my favorite. If I had to give it a score out of 10 for Dynasty Warriors 3, for me personally, just because of what the game means to me, just me personally, it would be honestly a 9 out of 10. All right, it would be a 9 out of 10. The only reason it doesn't get higher is because the storytelling aspect of the game isn't as great as some of the later games, but for me personally, it is still among the best games to play. For me personally, I always enjoy turning on Dynasty Warriors 3 and hopping in for a round or two, because it means a lot to me. It's where I started the series, the franchise. The reason that this channel even exists with Dynasty Warriors, because of Dynasty Warriors 3. I owe a lot of my passion for this series to that game. But anyway, guys, that's all I have for the video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, definitely appreciate a like, comment, or subscribe. We got Dynasty Warriors 4 up next. But yeah, guys, hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, definitely appreciate a like, comment, or subscribe, and I will see you all in the next video. Thanks for watching, everyone.